Thank you for having me.
What have you found in terms of student debt when you look at it in the context of the race of the people holding the debt?
Well, our research has found that Black borrowers tend to borrow the most. They tend to have higher loan balances and they have highest rates of default and delinquency while in repayment.
In this general discussion of widening inequality in America, there's some very concerning features here. I see that for white families, the wealthier a family is, the less student debt they take on, but that's not necessarily the pattern for black families?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the striking findings of one of my earliest articles. White young adults who went to college and took on debt, as their parental wealth increases, they took on less debt, right? We did not find any evidence to support this same relationship among Black borrowers. Black borrowers who came from higher net wealth households, we did not see them taking on less debt to attend college.
Has there been a hypothesis for why that's happening?
In our data, at the higher ends of the wealth distribution, which was having approximately like close to $200,000, so it was actually about $191,000, only about 3% of Black families actually had enough wealth to qualify to be a part of that. We also saw differences in the overall wealth portfolios. So having less access to fungible types of wealth, so savings, home equity that they could draw upon in order to transfer additional funds to their children.
And so what are some of the ways you'd like policymakers to make use of findings like this in trying to really ease these gaps?
So thinking more about, need-based aid, moving away from loan-based aid, but more to grants to help them pay for college so that they're not accumulating excessive amounts of debt. Are there potential frictions in the labor market? We want to think about labor market discrimination in particular. There's very strong evidence to suggest that Black college graduates have higher rates of unemployment compared to white students without a college degree, right? So that is all tied to the ability to earn a living and have an income that allows you to pay back those debts in a reasonable time. But then also, how do we think about what are the current policies in place, such as income-based repayment programs that can be approved upon so that those who need those particular types of policies are accessing them and using them in a way to help them pay back their debts in a reasonable time period.
The University of Wisconsin's Fenaba Addo, along with co-author Jason Houle at Dartmouth, did the study Racial Disparities in Student Debt and the Reproduction of the Fragile Black Middle Class. Professor, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And Las Vegas casino mogul Sheldon Adelson, also famous for his generous funding of President Trump's campaigns, is reportedly thinking of getting out of the casino business in the United States. Bloomberg News, citing unnamed sources, says Adelson is exploring the idea of selling off the Venetian, the Palazzo, maybe the Sands Convention Center, all in Vegas, for maybe something like $6 billion. He would then concentrate his gambling operations in Asia. The disappearance of conventions during pandemic has not been kind to Las Vegas. Our producers are Meredith Garrettson, Stephen Ryan, Daniel Shin, and Erica Soderstrom. I'm David Brancaccio. You're listening to the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Grassroots Natural Market. Local and organic. Family owned and operated since 2006. Featuring immune-supporting supplements for your family's health and all the groceries on your list. Open daily with curbside pickup. On Instagram at Grassroots5PTS.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Distracted driving is deadly. Teens? Yes, but adults too. And there are millions more adults than teens. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health knows time matters when it comes to stroke. Every minute a stroke goes untreated can mean an extra week of recovery. Recognize symptoms, including face drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulties. Act fast. Call 911.
This is WJCT News, 89.9 Jacksonville, broadcasting from Florida's Palm Coast to Georgia's Golden Isles. Listen anywhere, anytime on our app or WJCT.org.
The fate of the half penny for local schools. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, from COVID closures at 2 local high schools to the half-cent sales tax referendum on your ballot. We're having a conversation this hour with Duval County School Superintendent Dr. Diana Green. That's just ahead. Then later.
They take on a lot of burden and weight of their jobs and don't even necessarily recognize that it's there.
The local effort to support our first responders on National First Responders Day. All of that and more just ahead here on First Coast Connect. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. In a final sprint to Election Day, both presidential campaigns are pushing to get out the vote. As NPR's Franco Ordonez reports, where the presidential candidates spend their time says a lot about their election priorities.
President Trump is campaigning today in Michigan and Wisconsin, one of which he desperately needs to win, and in Nebraska. On Wednesday, he's scheduled to speak in Arizona and Nevada, which are also high on his priority list. Republican strategist Scott Jennings says the focus of the campaigns is no longer about trying to persuade undecided voters.
I mean, let's be honest. If you're still an undecided voter at this point, there's a good chance that you either A, aren't voting, or B, are a space alien who just landed here and you have no idea what's going on.
Former Vice President Joe Biden is heading to Georgia, a state his campaign thinks it can flip, and scheduled to be in Florida, the largest swing state, on Thursday. And then Iowa and Wisconsin Friday. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
Angry protesters went into the streets in West Philadelphia late Monday night and early this morning. This came after Philadelphia police shot a black man yesterday afternoon who was armed with a knife. The man, identified as Walter Wallace Jr., later died at a hospital. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw quickly went to the scene.
I'm here to listen. I don't have answers for what happened today. It just happened.
But protesters in Philadelphia gathered again and clashed with police. At least 30 officers have been hurt as police cars and dumpsters were set on fire. It's not clear how many protesters were hurt. The family of the man killed says he struggled with mental illness. There is video of the incident taken by a bystander. The man's mother had tried to shield or restrain him from police before the shooting. In Italy, angry protests have broken out in several cities against new government restrictions to slow the pandemic. NPR Silvia Poggioli reports from Rome, Italians are wary of being pushed into another lockdown like the one in March.
For the next month, bars and restaurants close at 6 p.m. and gyms, cinemas, and swimming pools are shut down. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said he's aware of the fatigue and frustration, but the measures are necessary, he said. But business owners and shopkeepers are pushing back. Many staged daytime peaceful demonstrations against closures and curfews, but at night violence exploded across the country. In Turin, demonstrators smashed windows and looted luxury shops. In Milan, police used tear gas to scatter rampaging youth gangs. In Rome, the neo-fascist group Forza Nuova broke a midnight curfew and swarmed through the city center, setting off firecrackers and Molotov cocktails. Silvia Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
You're listening to NPR News.
WJCT News 89.9 is sponsored in part by Humana, offering a variety of plans to fit your needs. Information at 904-303-2505.
It's 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. We have First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross next. A Jacksonville attorney is calling for sentencing reform because he says Northeast Florida's 4th Judicial Circuit is more lenient when prosecuting crimes if the perpetrator is a police or corrections officer. As WJCT News partner, the Florida Times Union reports, 59 JSO employees have been arrested since Sheriff Mike Williams took office, and all but 2 have avoided jail. Local defense lawyer A. Wellington Barlow says Circuit 4 has improved under State Attorney Melissa Nelson's leadership, but he says police are still getting off easier.
And, some people say, well, police officers, correctional officers have no record. That's true. But here's the other side of the coin. They know better.
Barlow says one of Jacksonville Sheriff's officer who was recently sentenced to 6 years in prison, followed by 9 years of probation for multiple counts of sexual battery. He says the average defendant would have gotten 18 years in prison for the same charges. In Jacksonville for the afternoon, a 40% chance of late afternoon rain. It's 77 degrees now. We'll be in the low 80s this afternoon, a low of 73 tonight. This is WJCT News 89.9.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for small businesses with an automated virtual receptionist and mobility features to run their businesses from anywhere. More at ooma.com.
Duval voters are making their voices heard this week at the polls, and that includes how we pay for our schools. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, a conversation with Duval Superintendent Dr. Diana Green. Already getting your calls. Get on the line now. It's 549-2937. Then later, an explainer. Some of those amendments on your ballot. We'll look at Amendments 2 and 3 and what they would do. But first this hour, the latest on the coronavirus pandemic. Cases of COVID are on the rise again around Florida and the nation. The state health department recorded 3,377 new cases of coronavirus Monday. Now, this increase is happening just as Duval County's mask mandate is set to expire at 5 o'clock today. We'll have to see if Mayor Curry extends it for another month. And of course, COVID outbreaks have forced the temporary closure of 2 local high schools. Fletcher and Douglas Anderson are set to reopen next month. At the same time, as voters head to the polls this week in robust early voting, they are deciding the fate of a half-cent sales tax referendum that would pay for school repair and construction across Duval County. Dr. Diana Green is the superintendent for the Duval County Public Schools, and she's on the line with more about all of this. Dr. Green, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And what are your questions for Duval Superintendent Dr. Diana Green? Already getting your calls. Join us. The number to call in, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. And our Facebook page is open. And you know, Dr. Green, the big issue on the ballot, of course, is the half-cent sales tax referendum for the Duval County Public Schools. I do want to get into a deep discussion with you about that. But first, could you bring us up to date on where things are with coronavirus across the school district and what your hopes are for reopening both Fletcher High School and the Douglas Anderson School of the Arts?
Well, thank you again, Melissa, for having me. Fletcher will reopen on October 29th, and Douglas Anderson will reopen on October 30th. It's part of our matrix when to close the classroom or when to close the school. And to close the school, it has to impact more than 20% of the student body or student and faculty. We are, I believe, at a place where we are starting to see an uptick. However, our students are doing a fantastic job wearing their masks, washing their hands, using hand sanitizer, and staying as much as possible 6 feet apart. Our concern continues to be, are they following those same protocols when they're not in school? For everyone, whether you're an employee or a student, we all have to continue those protocols when we are away from our workspace or our school. And when we continue to follow those protocols, we are seeing great results. And although we're seeing an uptick, we have tens of schools that have not had a single case. So we are doing everything that we put in our plan. Our teachers are phenomenal. They are working through this. We still have people who are afraid to be in the building, but they are there every day, and they're doing what we are tasked to do, which is educate our children.
Yes, absolutely right. Today is National First Responders Day, and later in the hour we'll talk about that. I think teachers absolutely should be counted among that group because what they are doing is so important right now. So, Dr. Green, what's the plan then for next semester? Will students continue to have the option to go to school full-time or continue with distance learning?
At the end of the semester, which we will ask our parents of families that are engaged remotely, do they want to return back to brick and mortar? Last quarter was the last time students could enter into Duval Homeroom. So now it will be more about coming back to brick and mortar and moving forward for the next semester.
Okay, let's move on then and talk about the half-cent sales tax referendum for the Duval County Public Schools. It is on everyone's ballot. Duval County voters, when you go to the polls, you will see it at the very end of your ballot. Don't leave this off. Educate yourself about this and vote. Dr. Green, this referendum, if the voters pass it, and the polling indicates that they will, would fund a massive amount of school repair and construction across the county. It's been a long road to even get this measure on the ballot. Can you explain why this is such a priority for your administration?
Yes, it's been a long road, but a productive one. It has brought the school district to the forefront of conversation. It would mean tremendous value, not only for the school district, but for our community. Duval County has the oldest schools in the state of Florida, and this measure will allow us to consolidate those small schools that are underutilized into a new facility. Our large high schools that have lots of portables, it will allow us to remove those portables and put permanent facilities. And in areas that we are seeing growth, it will allow us to build new schools to support that growth.
What would you say to those who don't like the idea of a sales tax going toward this kind of initiative?
Well, a sales tax can only be used for capital purchases. So it is only going to be used to upgrade facilities. You can use it for technology, but the vast majority of these dollars are to be used for infrastructure, not salaries. And the thing I hope that voters will remember is that with a half-cent sales tax, anyone who visits our city and purchases something that's of taxable value will be participating in this effort. And we account for about 20% of the dollars will come from outside of our community, but 100% of the dollars stay in our community. And so when you look at a family of four that spends $20 on something, that will probably only cost less than $6 to contribute to this half-cent sales tax. It's an opportunity for us to develop our own economic growth. We will have projects probably shovel-ready in the middle of next year, and that will give opportunities for industry, construction industry, to re-engage in big projects that will not only support our school district, but support our community as a whole.
And can you give some examples of why this has become so dire? Over the summer, we were all treated to the spectacle of kids in several schools around Duval County going to school. I'm sorry, not over the summer, but in the hotter months of the school year, going to school in buildings with no air conditioning in the state of Florida, leaks, rotting wood, kids in windowless rooms, and many trailers. What are the most flagrant examples across the district of just how bad off these buildings are?
Well, daily we run a sort of an operations report, and it isn't uncommon to wake up and say the air is not working at such and such school, maintenance is on the way, and 2 hours later air is up And so when you inquire about, well, is this a permanent fix? Many times, no, we fixed it well enough that the air will run. There's a part that's needed, and, oh, by the way, they don't make that part anymore, so we have to get it customized. And so those kinds of things are just the mundane daily things we deal with. But we have schools such as Annie Morgan Elementary, which is, I believe, over 120 years old, and parts of that original building still exist at Annie Morgan Elementary today. And for those students, they deserve a high-quality education that allows them to access 21st century learning. When I go in that building, my cell phone does not work. So those are just some examples of things that need to improve. Or Sandalwood High School, our largest high school in the district, has almost 40 portables located where students have to run out in the rain and, if they have a class, out in a portable classroom.
All right, I hope that gives folks an idea. The UNF Public Opinion Research Lab did poll on this matter a couple of times. Overwhelmingly, voters in Duval County say they do support the half-cent sales tax for schools, but we want to hear from you now. Let us know your thoughts and questions as we speak with Dr. Diana Green, Duval School Superintendent. It's 549-2937 to give us a call. Travis is in Riverside. Hi, Travis. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Sure.
I am wondering, is there a difference on reporting between a charter school and a public school?
In terms of COVID, you mean?
Yes, because the reason I ask is my daughter is doing a virtual from one of the Jacksonville charter schools from the Jacksonville Classical Academy.
Okay.
We got a letter yesterday saying that one of the students tested positive. That classroom is on quarantine. But it was actually sent in a different format. It was sent as a PDF. I don't mean to be conspiratorial about this, but it seems that they're saying one classroom is quarantined. They did not designate what grade or anything else. Luckily, we don't have to worry about it since my daughter is at home. But is there a different standard between the charter schools and public schools?
Sure. Thanks, Travis. Dr. Green, can you explain how the reporting works in the public schools as opposed to parochial and private and charter schools for COVID?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, I do want to say that charter schools are public schools. The distinction is that they have their own governing board and the school district is the sponsor. And the traditional public schools, we have a dashboard on our website that shows the, by school cases. But how each school reports as it relates to charter schools is up to the charter schools. They do not have the requirement to report on our dashboard. The Department of Health actually collects all of that information, whether it is a traditional public school, a charter school, or a private school. The Department of Health keeps all of that data. For the school district, we only report cases that impact brick and mortar traditional public schools. We do the same thing when a case happens at a school. We do a call out to all the families, letting them know that there's been a positive case on the campus. And parents who, students have prolonged contact with the person who tested positive get personal letters. Those letters go to those families. A phone call from DOH, Department of Health, is also made to those families, letting them know that they've been in close contact with someone who tested positive. But the charter schools do have their own reporting mechanism, and I would highly encourage you to contact the school.
Thanks for that. Ashley in Atlantic Beach. Hey, Ashley, good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. If the mayor does not extend the mask mandate, will the district still require masks in the schools?
Great question, Ashley. Thanks so much. Yes, Superintendent Dr. Green, the mask mandate for Duval is set to expire today at 5 o'clock. The mayor has been pretty vocal about wanting everyone to mask up, so we hope he'll extend it. But what if he doesn't? What's the plan for the schools?
For the schools, we will continue to wear masks. Our goal is always to put in the best strategies to support our employees and our students. With schools, it is very challenging to implement social distancing, though we do the very best that we can. And mask is the next best defense for everyone. And so we will continue our mask mandate.
Thanks for that. It's 549-2937. If you're just tuning in, lots of calls for Duval County School Superintendent Dr. Diana Green as we talk about how the district is working to contain coronavirus in the schools and a measure that's on your ballot. You, the voters of Jacksonville, will decide the fate of the half-cent sales tax referendum for schools, for school repair and construction. It's at the very end of your ballot, so when you go to vote, make sure you don't miss it. Rusty is on the west side. Hi, Rusty. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Melissa. The general contractor community would be overjoyed to tear down every school in town and rebuild all of them. But these very old brick and wood frame schools, some 100 years plus, they have got excellent good bones. The answer is to preserve and adapt these contributing structures to historic areas. Examples: Lehigh, Paxson, Jackson, Fishware, West Riverside, Arlington, Hendricks Avenue, Julia Landon, Kirby Smith, and the list goes on. So once they're gone forever. I'll take my answer off the air.
Rusty, thanks so much. You know, Dr. Green, people do have strong emotional attachments to so many of those schools Rusty mentioned with such deep roots in the community. And so what's the district's view on that, preserving these old buildings, but at the same time retrofitting them and shoring them up for this century?
Absolutely. I want to encourage Rusty to go to our website, ourduvalschools.org. You can see the projects for every single school, and every single school he mentioned, the projects are more around modernization and preserving those historic buildings, but doing it in a way that inside the building it can be as modern as possible so that our students can access 21st century learning technology. Being able to ensure that those buildings will last for many, many more years to come. Andrew Jackson, I know, is slated for modernization. Lee High School, it's slated for upgrades, but it already went through a modernization. So we're not trying to tear down all the old buildings and replace them with new schools. But there are some really old buildings that, based on an engineering firm's expertise, has indicated that it would be more cost-effective to build a brand new school than to try to renovate or modernize a particular school. And in the case for us, many of these schools are underutilized. It means it has a very low enrollment. And so that's part of the consolidation, where we're consolidating small schools and building a brand new school.
Thanks for that. Tom is in Atlantic Beach. Hey, Tom. Good morning to you.
How are you? Good morning. So I have some friends that live on the east side downtown, and they're concerned about the allocation of funds should the half cent go through being allocated to their neighborhoods and other underserved neighborhoods. So I just wonder if Dr. Green could comment on the allocation of those funds to the underserved community.
Great question. And Dr. Green, a big reason for this push is to shore up schools in underserved communities, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm going to ask the caller to check out our website, ourduvalschools.org. You will see our master's facilities plan and the budget tied to that master's facilities plan, and you will see that this project, or this humongous project, is really built on need and the need being met. And so you can see by school board district the dollars allocated for that particular district. What are the needs within that district? And so you would look at District 7 and see the needs for District 7 and the dollars tied for District 7, as well as District 1 through District 6. And many of the dollars are addressing those really old schools, as I stated, and they're at a point where we need to build a new school. And you will see that the east side, we are covering those schools at the same rate that we would cover schools at any other district.
Lots of emails coming in for you from listeners. Here's one from Marcia. What will prohibit a debacle like we saw with the Better Jacksonville plan or the Duval County Courthouse? Who will rein in the expenses and govern the distribution of the funds? Dr. Green.
The part of this referendum in the resolution states that there will be a citizens oversight committee. So that committee will be appointed by the school board, and their job is to ensure that the district follows the plan that's been laid out on, our website, ourduvalschools.org, and ensures that the funding that we're receiving from the half penny is going to those projects. That we will have to report to that committee the status of all of our projects, and that they will be able to see how the dollars are being spent. Our goal is to be very transparent.
Right, and that's really the tone, Dr. Green, of all of the emails we're getting. They just want to follow how the money will be spent and how the repairs will be prioritized. So, as you said, this plan is laid out in exhaustive detail at the duvalschools.org website. So I would encourage everyone to look at that. And, getting back to the other big issue, of course, the coronavirus, what else can you share with us about the situation in our local schools when it comes to protecting students, teachers, and staff?
Another important point I'd like to make about COVID-19 is the flu. We also need our employees and our students to go out and get their flu shot because we'll be battling both. Students will come with symptoms, and we're not determining what the student may be having an illness from, but we know that we'll be sending students home. And if they stay home before coming to school, that gives parents an opportunity to find out whether their child has COVID or do they have the flu. We are very excited about our partnership with the city for free testing for our students. And families, all they have to do is call the school if they feel like their child has symptoms and they want their child to be tested. They just get the form from the school and they can go to any one of the 4 sites and be tested. We want to continue to emphasize wearing your mask, whether you're in school or out of school, frequently washing your hands, and if you are not feeling well, please stay home. And if you have a family member that has tested positive, please stay home and notify the school. All too often, a student will get tested, but while they're waiting for the results, they'll come to school. Don't come to school. So if your family member is sick, has been tested, or you've been tested, do not come to school. That gives both of us opportunity to support the student by sending work home and at the same time not coming to school and possibly having to quarantine other students that may have had prolonged contact with the individual.
Good advice. And again, go to duvalschools.org to learn more about the half-cent sales tax referendum for local schools. It is on your ballot. If you have already voted, you've probably already seen it. If you have not voted yet, look for the measure at the very end of your ballot, which is a few pages long. Dr. Diana Green, Superintendent for the Duval County Public Schools, always great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And speaking of voting, coming up, Amendments 2 and 3 are 2 high-profile measures that are also on your ballot. We'll explain what they would do if they should pass. That's later, but up next.
They take on a lot of burden and weight of their jobs and don't even necessarily recognize that it's there.
Helping the helpers as we mark today National First Responders Day. How you can support them. That's after this.
Turntable Tuesday can now be heard on Anthology on the WJCT app and 89.9 HD3. For the best on vinyl, listen to Anthology Tuesdays at 9. Turntable Tuesday, part of the Jacksonville Music Experience.
You blink, you reach for that handful of chips, you scroll through social media, it's all happening on automatic pilot. When it comes to being well-informed, being more mindful of where you get your news can make a big difference in how you see the world. To get your information in context, to gain different perspectives, and to understand real issues, choose NPR as your go-to source for election news. 2020 election, it's time to listen.
Here on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Today is National First Responders Day. That's a time set aside to honor the men and women who keep us all safe. Particularly in this time of pandemic, the importance of first responders of all stripes is just critical. You can do your part to support local first responders this week. To learn how, I spoke with Tracy Hemanowski. She's founder of the First Responder Project. Tracy, thanks for being with us. Good to have you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about National First Responder Day and the virtual fundraiser you're going to be having for it.
Thank you. October 28th, this coming Wednesday, is National First Responder Day. And our local nonprofit, First Responder Project, is having a virtual fundraiser to raise funds to meet the psychological and emotional needs of first responders and their families.
Yeah. And in this pandemic in particular, we've all been made aware just how tough it can be for first responders of many kinds. Let's talk about the different kinds of first responders that you're trying to support, because it's police, it's fire, but it's others too, right?
It is, yes. When we say first responders, oftentimes we think about those two large groups of individuals who are certainly included in that. But we also think about our 911 operators. We think about Department of Corrections and officers who are serving in that capacity, medical examiners, trauma medical professionals, EMT, and Department of Homeland Security. There are quite a few pockets of first responders out there, many of whom work behind the scenes and really are very rarely recognized for the work that they do, particularly those working in cyber crimes. And so we're really looking to reach out to all of those pockets of individuals.
Right, because over time, the cumulative stress, the exposure to trauma that first responders are taking on more and more throughout this year in particular, that builds up and that affects their health and well-being, right?
Yes, it does. And what we call operational wear and tear is inherent to line of duty jobs. And oftentimes, first responders are not usually on the receiving end of a response. So they take on a lot of burden and weight of their jobs and don't even necessarily recognize that it's there until that cumulative effect can sometimes show itself. So we really spend time providing some education and outreach to first responders to acknowledge that cumulative effect to exposure, and sometimes that exposure is to trauma, sometimes it is to threat, sometimes it is to tragedy, or a combination thereof.
How can people then support your effort Wednesday on National First Responder Day? Direct us to the appropriate digital space so people can click on and learn more and support.
Thank you. Yes, on Wednesday, we are going to be featured on the 904 Now, and that's going to be a Facebook Live event. That's going to take place between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. And again, that same day, the 28th, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Our website is www.firstresponderproject.org. Our listeners on the 28th will have an opportunity to hear directly from first responders, and we may have some family members as well who will be either doing a live interview or a recorded or live Zoom call. and we'll hear from them about bearing the burden of service-oriented jobs. And our listeners can go to our website, and if they're interested in supporting us, they can do one of two things. They can submit a PayPal donation, or they can volunteer with us, whether it be social media, marketing, grant writing. We want to expand our reach and capabilities to reach our first responders in this area.
So check it out Wednesday, and kudos to you, Tracy. She's Tracy Hemanowski, founder of the First Responder Project. Check it out Wednesday. It's National First Responder Day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Well, early voting is happening at a brisk pace across Florida and the nation this week. One of the questions we've been getting a lot lately here in our WJCT newsroom has to do with all of the amendments you'll see on your ballot when you go to vote. It can be a little confusing. Right now, we're going to take a closer look at two of the highest profile amendments. You will decide, Amendments 2 and 3. On the line, we're pleased to welcome back to the show Dr. Daniel Cronrath, Professor of Political Science at FSCJ. Daniel, good morning.
Hi, Melissa. Good morning to you.
Good to have you. We hope to have your colleague, Dr. J.R. Woodward from FSCJ, in a few moments. Okay, quite a few amendments on the ballot. It's a big ballot voters have to get through when they go to vote. And at this time, we're going to educate people on two amendments, Amendments 2 and 3. If you have questions about those, give us a call now at 549-2937. Let's begin with Amendment 2, the $15 minimum wage initiative. This would gradually increase the minimum wage in Florida. Can you explain a little bit about what it would do to change wages for Florida workers?
Yeah, well, essentially after, if this were to pass, and of course I'm glad today that you selected Amendment 2 and Amendment 3, it's not that the other amendments aren't interesting or not important and not even controversial. It's just, as you've already pointed out, that 2 and 3 appear to be the ones which are teetering on the 60% threshold, which would actually be required in this election to actually amend the Constitution. So relative to Amendment 2, of course, this would increase the minimum wage in Florida every single year by $1 a year until the year 2025, where the effective wage would then be a living wage, after 2025 then being indexed for inflation here in the state. Of course, proponents of the minimum wage increase are going to say, you know, Florida does not have a living wage right now. We have folks who are obviously working 1 to 2 jobs, just trying to make ends meet. They'll make the argument that there is dignity in work, and if you believe in that concept, then that work should actually be able to pay you enough money that you can live and that you can get by and that you can raise a family. The other argument that I hear frequently with proponents is that people who are at the bottom of our income spectrum in the United States, Melissa, they tend to be spenders, not savers. They tend to be people who are going to be, when they get that increased wage, they're going to be putting it directly back into the economy. They're going to be buying things from local businesses, hopefully small businesses. And then, of course, there is the opposition to this, what the opponents would say, that the burden, particularly with small businesses, Melissa, would just be too onerous, particularly coming off of a COVID pandemic. There's to basically require the small dry cleaner shop, the mom and pop diner, to begin the process whereby eventually they would be at $15 an hour. Would this, in fact, put those kind of businesses out of business?
Right. That's certainly the argument against it. Throughout history, educate us a little bit. We've heard those arguments about that increasing the minimum wage is too expensive, too onerous for small business. We can't afford it. That's always been the argument against raising the minimum wage. But over the years, very slowly, it has gone up. And, you know, the argument for it, if you could get into this a little bit as well, is that people cannot afford to live on this wage. It is not a living wage in today's economy.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you have the if you are, have the political ideology where you believe in work, and you're somebody who may not be as big a fan of our social safety net system, and you would like to see your taxes reused to fund things like the SNAP program or TANF programs or things along those lines, which help lift people out of poverty, then the only way that you can really deal with the with the lower income levels in our society is to say, okay, if you do work, we are going to be paying you enough money in order to actually get by and to have an incentive to get out there in the workforce and be able to take care of yourself and take care of the needs of your family. In reality, your point is a good one. Okay, there will certainly be, if Amendment 2 will pass, there are certainly going to be businesses who may close. Okay, but when you look at the overall cost-benefit analysis historically, Melissa, the benefits of putting more money into people's pockets far outweigh the costs for small business owners. And by the way, we're not even mentioning corporations here who are opposed to this legislation, because let's just get real. Publix, McDonald's, a lot of these large retailers, they clearly have enough revenue every year, Melissa. We don't need to dig into their books too far to know that a small dent into their shareholder profits could easily be funneled to Amendment 2 to actually help lift people out of poverty.
Let's bring your colleague onto the show now. He's Dr. J.R. Woodward, professor of sociology at FSCJ. Professor Woodward, good to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So we just heard the pro and con for Amendment 2. Let's talk now about Amendment 3, which would establish a top 2 open primary system for primary elections in Florida. Other states call this a jungle primary system. Currently, we have closed primaries for Republican and Democratic races. How would Amendment 3 change the system?
First thing we should probably point out is that this is for state-level races only, so this isn't for national races. And what would happen now is that everybody who is running would essentially be on one ballot, and the top 2 vote getters would then move forward. So it doesn't matter what your party affiliation is. Before you actually go into the booth, you get to put your stamp on whoever you think should be at the top. And so the top 2 then, what could possibly be different is the top 2 might end up being in the same party. So you could have 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans, both on the final ballot, and that would be your choice. So it could make substantial changes to our current system. We do something similar right now in the city of Jacksonville, and Professor Conrath has talked about this quite a bit in the past, and we'll probably have more to say about it. But we have toyed with this, at least here at the local level. Some concerns people have, the Democratic and Republican parties are in opposition to this ballot amendment. They're concerned. They say we don't want the other party to tell us, who should be going forward on our ticket and the like. Some other people are concerned that it might hurt minority representation. There might be voting blocks that now kind of protect or move forward some candidates that might be lost in a system like this. It might be too diluted down. But on the other hand, a couple states have implemented this over the last couple of years, and while the research on it is still kind of new, there doesn't seem to have been those kind of negative effects at this point, at least.
So is the argument for Amendment 3 to open up the system to more centrist candidates and pull the parties away from their partisan extremes? Is that the argument, or is it more to just increase the participation of no party affiliated voters who currently can't vote in primary elections?
I've heard both.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
Excuse me, Dr.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let me just say real quick. I know you'll say more, but I think both. I've heard both. The main concern, particularly for Dana as a political scientist, is that getting people to vote that in the past, like you said, we have millions of people in Florida that are MPAs, non-party affiliated, and so they would finally be able to vote. But I have also heard the notion of if you're having to be a little bit more in the central to get a larger base, since you're having to reach outside of your typical party platform.
Daniel Cronrath.
Yeah, Melissa, we have 3.6 million people who live in the state of Florida who currently, for whatever reason, have decided not to be members of the 2 main political parties. That's 3.6 million people. And, for folks who like to, just to get into some of the opposition to it, for folks who like to talk about, disenfranchisement for currently elected African-American office holders, 1.3 million of those 3.6 million people are people who are brown or black, who have chosen in the state of Florida that they want to vote. They want to participate in our democracy. However, the two-party system as we currently have it isn't a fit for them. So I think the other thing that I would reference too that JR had already previously mentioned is, we have a very similar system here in Jacksonville. And it's the same system that did not prevent us from electing our first African-American sheriff in Nat Glover, or our first African-American mayor in Alvin Brown. So I think that as a political scientist, Melissa, I'm going to err every single time on the idea of getting more people to vote and opening up the franchise to more people who can participate. If you are somebody who is a deep partisan, whether being a Republican or a Democrat, you're not going to like Amendment 3 because it will essentially change the business of which maybe you're a hobbyist, maybe you're an elected official, maybe somebody that you're a party activist and you're really, really into the cause of your political party. This will no doubt weaken at the statewide level the role and the impact of political parties in our elections. If you like the current system, you're probably not going to like Amendment 3. If you're somebody who feels like you're on the outside looking in, you're going to like Amendment 3.
All right. And let's keep in mind, these amendments require 60% of the voters to approve them to pass. And by the way, there's another amendment on the ballot, Dr. Woodward, that would make it even harder for voters to change Florida's constitution. If it passes, the barrier would be even higher.
Right, that's Amendment 4, and it's requiring essentially a second round of voting. So if there's an amendment that passes, it would not automatically go into effect. There would be another election. It would be the 2 years. After a 2-year cycle, they would vote on it again. And the people that support this, their main argument is that this will provide some clarity. Like if we're getting rid of kind of some of these potential amendments that are confusing, and if you really want this to happen, then let's make sure it happens by voting on it a second time, and it'll get rid of potentially superfluous amendments. But in reality, it's going to most likely it would make it much more difficult for people to get something to pass, the actual voters, because getting 800,000 or so signatures to get something on the ballot takes a lot of work, and time, and money.
Let me get a call on for both of you. It's Susan in Mandarin. Susan, go ahead.
Yes, I originally was going to vote yes on Amendment number 3, but then I realized it's only for the primary, and anyone can vote in the primary now. I have a friend that's a libertarian, and he says they don't support Amendment 3 because they don't think it's really going to help third parties. And I think that we have a right to I'm a Democrat. I have a right to have a choice. If like 20 Democrats want to run, they should run in the primary so we can pick the one that we want. And then that person goes on to the general election where anybody can vote. I know a lot of Bernie fans were mad that they couldn't vote in the primary, but this amendment would not change that because it only affects state primaries. Okay, thank you very much. I'm usually for everybody voting, but everybody does get to vote. I do worry about that Melissa Nelson campaign where I didn't get to vote for Melissa Nelson, though. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Susan. Daniel Cronrath, people need to brush up on all of the amendments before they go to vote. It's 6, right, on the ballot this time?
Right. 4 citizen-initiated amendments and then 2 from our legislature.
Okay.
Right.
And so go to wjct.org/elections. You can also go to the League of Women Voters of Florida website to educate yourself about all of these amendments. And I want to thank you both for joining us with your insights on Amendments 2 and 3 today. Daniel Cronrath and J.R. Woodward, both professors at FSCJ here in Jacksonville. Guys, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa.
And in a moment, how the Alhambra Theater just keeps on thriving, even in this pandemic. That's next.
I'm Harold Samuels, and I'm a sales rep at the station. My favorite part of the job is simply getting to meet and build relationships with new businesses. It's a family, it's a relationship that we have together where they understand everything on the news platform is correct, it's accurate, there's no spin, and it's an honor and a pleasure to represent that. That's why we do what we do. This is WJCT News 89.9.
Despite the CDC's temporary halt to evictions, a lot of renters are still getting those notices.
Every person that was in it, the 7 families that went to court that Thursday, was evicted.
I'm Kyle Rizdal. How a woman in North Carolina is experiencing the eviction crisis. We'll tell you next time on Marketplace.
Tonight at 6, here on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Marco Werman. Other nations look to the U.S. and see us struggling to manage COVID-19.
I get emails and text messages from all over the world just kind of shaking their head. What is happening? Why has the U.S. response been so ineffective?
Looking at the U.S. from beyond our borders, we put America's day in a global context. It's the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Tanya Mosley. A forensic team has unearthed nearly a dozen coffins as it searches for victims of the 1921 Tulsa, Oklahoma race massacre. It's estimated that well over 100 black people were killed in that massacre. We'll check in with a woman whose grandparents survived the violence. That's next time on Here and Now.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
It's on track to be the most expensive Senate race in American history. North Carolina's contest has already shattered the record for the most outside money ever spent in a congressional contest. But the influence of super PACs and dark money is national. What impact are they having where you live? I'm Jen White. That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, the pandemic has made it tough for virtually all small businesses right now, but especially ones that feature live performance. Still, the oldest continuously operated dinner theater in the United States, the Alhambra, is going strong. I found out how as I spoke with Alhambra owner Craig Smith. Hi, Craig. Good to have you back on the show. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So tell us what's happening at the Alhambra Theater right now in this crazy time.
Well, the season of WOW 2021 we just announced and released, and we're excited about that. Been selling a lot of tickets, and trying to keep everybody safe and healthy and comfortable, and feed them some good food and show them some good shows, and it's been quite the balancing act, as you can imagine.
I can only imagine, and with this pandemic shutting down most live performance, it was great to see that the Alhambra did recently find a way to open back up again, but with some restrictions. So tell us how you're handling things.
So right now we're still practicing all the social distancing guidelines. We're having our servers change gloves between every interaction with every individual, the price of gloves have gone up exponentially, so that's an expensive proposition. But we're just using fresh everything, trying not to let anybody touch anything. Or we have a rover that wanders the theater all the evening long, wiping down every surface that you may touch. And literally just that we have a little path through the theater all the way around the place and back to the front door and back through again. So we've been doing those things, and just everybody having masks on and keeping everybody 6 feet apart. And, a lot of restaurants have gone back 100% occupancy and that kind of thing. And we have not. Once we're all sure that we're kind of in a safe zone and kind of through this, and maybe have some more vaccines or therapeutics, then it'll be a different position. But right now, we're just keeping everybody safe and comfortable.
Sure. Now, to break even or to turn a profit, you do eventually want to bring in more audience. So what are your thoughts there?
Oh, of course. Like I had said to you in the past, we're like a hotel. You have to have a certain percentage to make everything work. and 50% don't get you there. But at the same token, 50%, we've got 91 people. It's hard to believe the Alhambra has 91 employees. But when you have 91 employees, and a lot of them single moms with young children, and a lot of new dads with some newborns, and a lot of kids going to college, and so there's so many people. And of course, our legacy staff that have all been there 35, 40 years. We have so many people that rely on the Alhambra, and our guests that rely on it for their place to go and feel safe. Well, listen, almost every day somebody says, Craig, this is the only place we come. We feel safe coming here.
Wow.
I hear that every day. And so I take that to heart, and I take it very seriously. So although at 50% we're not where we need to be, we're doing what we need to be doing, in my opinion. And so from the opinion of our audience, I just get the nicest feedback and compliments.
So what's the schedule then for the rest of the season? What are we looking forward to in the way of shows?
So the good news is every available seat we have has been sold out since June. We start Footloose tomorrow night. Of course, that's kind of our era-ish, and excited about Footloose. It's a great show. The rehearsals have been awesome.
6
so we start
degrees
that
of Kevin Bacon.
And then after that, we've got It's a Wonderful Life. We've added some matinees for Wonderful Life, so we will have some seats available for anybody interested in seeing It's a Wonderful Life. And then we're going to have a New Year's bash, socially distanced New Year's bash with the funniest dance floor you've ever seen in your life. Keep everybody apart and safe. Have their own little bubble. And then we'll get started next season with Singing in the Rain, which would have been this year, but we canceled it, back during the peak of the pandemic.
So people then need to support the Alhambra by planning to buy some tickets for the 2021 season. Then it sounds like.
Yes, ma'am, and we've had so many people, and we still, we did the takeout meals. Have been doing takeout meals really since March, and people have loved it. We still have people right now coming to get takeout meals almost every day, almost every evening that we're open. We have people coming to get takeout meals. It's just our food to go. And I've probably had hundreds of emails say, Craig, it's as good when we take it home as it was when we ate there.
Yeah, people need to think of that as another option. So go to alhambrajax.com as the Alhambra continues right on through this challenging time with amazing entertainment. He's the maestro, the CEO, Craig Smith. Thank you so much, Craig, for stopping by, and I hope I see you in person next time.
Absolutely, Melissa, and I certainly appreciate you and all you do for our community.
Again, that's alhambrajax.com, and that's our show. Thanks for listening. And to all of our guests and callers, our producer is Heather Schatz. Josh Torres is show director. Our news director is Jessica Palumbo, and Bill Bortsfield is our digital editor here in the newsroom. Keep those emails coming, meanwhile, to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And if you missed any part of today's show, we'll rebroadcast it tonight at 8 on the radio, or you can listen to our podcast later today, wherever you listen. I'm Melissa Ross. This is First Coast Connect on 89.9, and we'll be right back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great day.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health